By the end of this video, you're gonna have the majority of the Save the Cat book basically in your back pocket to refer back to whenever you want. This video has been years in the making, so the only thing I ask is that you please hit that like button for me. It's the only form of payment I'm requesting after my years of hard work on these, so please give it a like. Now, let's get started. So, main character, who is going through this internal conflict, goes up against this antagonistic force. By the end of this video, we're going to be answering two questions. What is a log line, and how do we create one? Now this video is going to be jam-packed with a ton of examples, so you're going to want to stick around to the end. So back in the day, a log line was something that producers put on scripts for them to determine if they're going to read it or not. A log line is a 1 to 2 sentence attention grabber for your film, and it's meant to signal to your audience whether or not it's a story that they're interested in. So yes, your log line will inform your audience what your film is about, and also if your log line is doing its job correctly, they should want to see more. A log line gives viewers an instant understanding of your story's genre and informs them what's at stake. Now this log line gives audiences a sense of how complicated or simplistic accomplishing said goal will be. If you can help it, hopefully you constructed your log line well before you started writing your story. Why? Because constructing your log line first is going to keep your story on track. It's going to keep it honed in on that main character's goal. The moment you start bringing dragon aliens into the fold, you can look at your log line and say, hey, did my log line allude to any dragon aliens being in this story? The log line should be used to redirect your story just in case you start going into deep, uncharted waters. We should use it to develop our stories into what it's actually supposed to be. Now let's say we're done with post-production. The film's done. In this stage of the game, your log line is a marketing tool. And the log line is extremely important when it comes to marketing your film because it's one of those first things that your potential audience members will see before they decide to choose your film. Your log line as well as your trailer is going to help potential viewers decide whether they should choose your title or your competitors. It gets them interested so that they can push the buy, rent, or watch option on their remotes. Now we're going to break down the essential elements your log line must have to be compelling. First thing you've got to have in your log line is an adjective First thing you've got to have in your log line is an adjective describing your protagonist. Who are they in your story? Is their occupation crucial to the film? Is where they're from paramount to the story? A middle-aged Chinese immigrant who? A geek who is surviving life. A young FBI cadet. A sullen 10-year-old girl. A group of US soldiers. On his journey to 10,000 subscribers, a lonely like button. But seriously, hit the like button if you can. Now those are just a few examples of what you could begin your logline with. Now that we've identified and described our main character, or ers, the second thing that has to be in your logline is the goal of your main character. Think about what your main character is trying to accomplish. How hard is accomplishing said goal going to be? Because a great logline gives your audience an idea of how difficult accomplishing said goal will be. Think about it as the destination your MC should get to by the end. Now this external goal should reflect your main character's internal conflict in some way, shape, or form. Let's take this logline from Leaving Las Vegas, for instance. A Hollywood screenwriter who lost everything because of his alcoholism, ... Did you catch it? Lost everything because of his alcoholism, right? The alcoholism alludes to some internal conflict that the main character is having. So let's take it a step further. Really quickly, there are 5 triggers that usually cause internal conflict. 1, desire, or something your main character wants. 2, need, something your character or someone associated with your main character requires for survival. 3, duty, some obligation that character feels is right or necessary. 4, fear, or a strong worry that drives that character. 5, expectation, or something that your main character feels obligated to do. Now, when a character experiences 2 or more of these triggers at a given time, your character has internal conflict, causing your characters to feel fear, doubt, confusion, or distress. Now let's take this logline, for instance, created by a slam dance reader for one of my scripts. A police executive combats a powerful gang antagonist, we'll get to that in a sec, while looking for one of her missing foster children. Looking for one of her missing foster children is my MC's primary goal. Now the internal conflict isn't necessarily spelled out, but it's alluded to because I've got all 5 of those triggers wrapped up in one problem. No mother desires to have a missing child. They need to protect them. It's their duty. They fear their loss. and they expect to be the one to keep them safe. Now, the next part of your log line has got to be the biggest obstacle your MC encounters. So, main character who is going through this internal conflict goes up against this antagonistic force. Or a main character who is doing this main goal or desire comes into conflict with this antagonistic force. One thing that you've got to remember is that your main character's goal should tie into his or her central conflict, which, if you don't know what a central conflict is, I've made videos on what that is, so please check it out if you haven't already. Now, according to the late Blake Snyder, your logline will have a sense of irony in it. Or I like to think of it as that thing that makes your story like that much more interesting. Because you're gonna have a main character who is this way come up against something that he or she completely opposes. It's the thing that's the complete opposite of what he or she stands for or is trying to do. And we know that we as indie filmmakers have got to be a bit more strategic with our marketing tools because we have limited resources. And irony could be that missing piece that helps your title compete with a bigger title. Quick example of irony. A teenage operative who struggles to pull his family away from a life of violence is pitted against trained killers. So there is a sense of irony about this, right? You're trying to pull your family away from violence, yet you're being pitted against trained killers. So it just goes to show you that there's going to be conflict upon conflict here. And that's what people find interesting. The audience is like, so he's trying to get his family away from violence, but he's an operative, a spy, so dangerous life there. And he's pitted against trained killers? A middle-aged Chinese immigrant is swept into an insane adventure in which she alone can save existence by exploring other universes and connecting with the lives she could have led. Notice that the central conflict is really nicely baked in there, and you'll see that it's common amongst small indie features because they're trying to be noticed as opposed to big, Chris Nolan tentpoles. Leaving Las Vegas logline. A Hollywood screenwriter who lost everything because of his alcoholism arrives in Las Vegas to drink himself to death. There he meets and forms an uneasy relationship and non-interference pact with a prostitute. During her family's move to the suburbs, a sullen 10-year-old girl wanders into a world ruled by gods, witches, and spirits, a world where humans are changed into beasts. A young FBI cadet must receive the help of an incarcerated and manipulative cannibal killer to help catch another serial killer, a madman who skins his victims. Now, this whole logline is guilt-ridden with irony here. You want to catch a killer by consulting a killer. A controversial true crime writer finds a box of Super 8 home movies in his new home, revealing that a murder case he is currently researching could be the work of an unknown serial killer whose legacy dates back to the 1960s. One for Lightyear. A huge underrated movie, by the way. I enjoyed this movie like a lot. It's basically Interstellar, but animated. Don't know why a lot of people didn't enjoy it. Anyway, while spending years attempting to return home, marooned space ranger Buzz Lightyear encounters an army of ruthless robots commanded by Zurg, who are attempting to steal his fuel source. Monster in the house. Golden fleece, out of the bottle, dude with a problem, rites of passage, buddy love, Whydunit, the fool triumphant, institutionalized, and my personal favorite, superhero. Now, Blake Snyder mentions in his very controversial book, Save the Cat, a full-fledged knowledge of hundreds of movies is required if there is any hope of you actually bringing your film to market. He cites the merit of being able to learn from other films. If you're like, no, Alan, my film is unlike anything you've ever seen. Well, I'm sorry, it's been done before. But you are gonna do yours differently. Because by the end of this video, you will know exactly what genres came together in order to form your work of art. Additionally, we all know that there is a primal desire required in our story in order to get our audience interested, because we've all read Writing Screenplays That Sell by Michael Haig. Or we've watched this video right here. Defining your movie genre also helps you recall what your film's primal desire is. So again, when you're writing your feature films or your shorts, it's incredibly crucial to recognize the kind of movie you're making so that you don't risk reinventing the wheel and creating cliches. In order to recognize what's been done, you've got to remember what's been done. Hey everybody, Alan Northern here giving you filmmaking tips and tricks. And today we are going to talk about the 10 types of film that can be made to more easily help you define your film genre, help you identify your film's primal desire, and research how films like yours would perform at the box office if it were made today. So if you're ready to get started, please smash that like button. Smash it, because you know I got the juice. Okay, but seriously, I have tons of great content in addition to this video right here. So please, smash that like button, it really helps me out. One key in differentiating which movie is which lies in how the film's setup sends our main characters down their journey. So what does films like Saw, It, Conjuring, His House, Jurassic World, Underwater, and Sinister have in common? Well, there's a monster or an entity after all of your main characters in a confined space. With the film It, it's Derry. The Conjuring, a house. For His House, it's his house. Jurassic World, it's the theme park. And for Underwater, it's the underground space station. Its primal desire for the most part is to not get eaten by the monster. Even in films when police officers are trying to catch the killer, as seen in Saw. So what are the rules of this genre? Alan, you don't understand, my film has no rules. I don't do rules! No, but hear me out. If you want to break the rules, it's best to know what the rules are and why they exist. At least give me that. So, first rule, our protagonists are trapped in a confined space. It could be a town, your dreams, or even the whole world. See how I broke the rule there? The idea behind this rule is simply that no matter where your main characters go, they can't escape. They're not safe. Second rule, the main character had to have done something to either create the monster or B, get into the monster's crosshairs. They committed some kind of a sin or a treacherous deed. Sinister. The only reason why Ellison Oswald is in the boogeyman's crosshairs is because he is seeking fame and fortune. That's what makes Sinister so good. That's what makes it so effective, because it understands these rules and it connects these rules to the film's central conflict, which is where we get the film's controlling idea. And these concepts elevate the film by teaching the audience a life lesson that gives the film significant impact that we can choose to utilize in our everyday lives. So remember, yes, you can break the rules, but it's important to know why the rules exist to begin with. Use them, bend them to your will, in order to give your movie a fresh take on this genre, because the possibilities are endless. So you may think that films like Shrek, Lord of the Rings, Are We There Yet, and Casino Royale are completely different movies. Well, you'd be wrong. Actually, they're kind of the same.
And you'll also know that in poker you never play your hand. You play the man across from you.
When you're good at reading people.
Yes, I am. Which is why I've been able to detect an undercurrent of sarcasm in your voice.
Golden Fleece. Snyder referred to this kind of film as a road trip movie.
You have only one choice. The ring must be destroyed. It must be taken deep into Mordor and cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came.
In this film, our hero sets out on a perilous journey in order to find something or do something. But then our hero winds up discovering something about himself that he never knew before. The people, incidents, and all of the chaos that emerges from all of the film's plot points ultimately results in the hero growing and becoming a better or a worse version of themselves. The theme of all Golden Fleece movies is internal growth and how the film's events affect our hero's beliefs. So the hero must learn new things about himself through the film's story events. And this is ultimately what makes your story work. Your job as a filmmaker is to make each and every milestone in the film significant in your hero's progression as a human being. The main thing that makes your film great is how various events in your film made your character change, and the degree by which they changed from the beginning to the end. Now I'm going to challenge you in the comments. Please write in the comments what you believe separates great films in this genre, such as Casino Royale, and good films in this genre, like Are We There Yet? Next up, Out of the Bottle.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
So what do you think Aladdin, Cinderella, Bruce Almighty, and Freaky Friday have in common? Yeah, exactly. They're the same movie. This is known as the classic what if tale. So if your story ever asks the question, what if, or I wish I had this, and boom, it appears, then odds are your film is out of the bottle.
Wish fulfillment?
3 wishes to be exact. An ixnay on the wishing for more wishes. That's it. 3. 1, 2, 3. No substitutions, exchanges, or refund.
So we've got a likable protagonist who comes into contact with a magical creature or entity or object, and then grants the character any wish he wants, or fundamentally alters the way they live their lives.
Why am I in Anna's room? This isn't mine. Those aren't mine. That's definitely not mine.
What does Aladdin and Cinderella have in common? Well, in both stories, our hero's environment suppress our hero's deepest desires, and by the end, they both realize something, that being themselves is ultimately going to get them what they actually want. That being themselves is ultimately the way to go, and that magic isn't everything. To sum it up, your film's events should teach the protagonist that their perspective is distorted. They're currently going about life incorrectly, and the events in your story will put them on the right track. The protagonist must grow in order to survive, and it's only then that he or she gets what they really want. So maybe their outlook on themselves is incorrect. Maybe their viewpoint on the world at large is incorrect. But by the end of the film, the audience should leave with a little dude with a problem.
I mean, $4,000 just drove off.
How are you, the ordinary, going to handle something extraordinary? Now, the huge audience appeal behind this film genre lies in the fact that we all consider ourselves to be pretty ordinary, pretty normal. And the problem that the characters usually face in this genre is death. Just be sure your problem relates to death in some way, shape, or form here, because that's a primal problem. The problem must be primal, which means your problem threatens your character's access to life, shelter, food, clothes, and education. But education isn't primal. Oh, just roll with it, please, for the sake of this video. So we as the audience automatically sympathize with that main character, which makes these tales very effective. In this kind of film, an ordinary guy or gal is exposed to an extraordinary problem. The bigger the obstacle, the more heroic your main character must become in order to conquer that obstacle. And the common theme running throughout this entire genre is the main character utilizing his individuality in order to beat the bad guy or overcome the obstacle. Rites of passage.
I dated this girl for a while, and she was really a nasty freak. She just loved to get down with sex all the time. She was like, any time of day, she was like, yeah, let's go. I'm so nasty.
Mean Girls. Boyhood. Bridge to Terabithia. When you create a film where the major plot points surround the theme of someone transitioning from one stage of their life into another stage of life, odds are your film is rites of passage.
You're like really pretty. Thank you. So you agree? What? You think you're really pretty? Oh, I don't know. Oh my God, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it? Oh, my mom made it for me. It's adorable.
Although these kinds of films aren't everyone's cup of tea, these stories about growing pains resonate with a lot of individuals because we've all been through them. And those are some pretty painful memories to recall. Typically, the pain and torment of this film comes from the outside and attacks the character's life in some way, shape, or form. So the outside force of life, boom, attacks the main character. Oftentimes, the monster in this film kind of creeps up on the main character, and the film is a slow revelation of what that monster is. And it's only by going through this dreadful, painful experience that our hero comes up with a solution to his conflicts. So typically these are films where your character's having a rough go at it at high school, dealing with family turmoil, a divorce, a midlife crisis, and even dealing with the end of their first love.
Écoute, tu peux venir me chercher, non?
Usually the hero must realize that there are aspects of his life he can control and aspects of his life he can't. It's only after this realization and some growth that our character can find his version of happiness. Buddy love.
Discretionary revelation.
No, you just gave her up. I asked you one simple question. You gave me all the information.
I thought that's what you wanted.
What?
Some films in this genre include Finding Nemo, Step Brothers, Lethal Weapon, Elf, E.T. There's a lot of films in this genre. So Blake believes that the dawn of this genre came into play when the main character didn't have anyone to talk to or bounce ideas off of or debate with.
When life gets you down, you know what you gotta do?
I don't want to know what you gotta do.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. What do? We swim, swim.
Dory, no singing.
This works because stories of me and my best friend will always resonate with audiences. All buddy movies are just love stories in disguise. And love stories are just buddy movies in disguise, with the potential for sex. The rules for these kinds of films are simple. At first, the buddies hate each other, and your film's adventure makes them realize they actually need each other. Think about it, if you start your story and your characters like each other, then where exactly is the story dynamic between your two characters gonna go?
Don't say something in the next 10 minutes. I'm gonna take you to the hospital. I don't wanna say I'm getting concerned, but to be honest, I'm getting concerned.
This is fun.
Now you know you can break this rule, but it's important to understand why this rule is in place. It's to start your film at a 0 state so that by the end of your film, you have a hero state. With respect to your story, your two characters are incomplete halves of a whole. Now, normally our all is lost moment in this film is a variation of their friendship or their relationship being destroyed or dismantled in some way. And if you don't know what an all is lost moment is, watch this video right here, and then come on back. It's all about story structure. I'll also put a link to that video as well in the description below. Anyway, buddy love, right. So typically the main character is one way and it takes some quiet guidance by the buddy in order to force a positive change in the main character. And it's because of this change that the main character can then fulfill his mission and bring the film to its climactic end. Whydunit? Knives Out, Citizen Kane, Murder on the Orient Express, and even Mindhunter. They're all films in the Whydunit genre. This film genre is all about uncovering the deepest, darkest parts of the human mind. Yes, it's all about who conducted the murder, but great films are about why that murder took place to begin with, and why that person did that deed in excruciating detail. So this genre is not about the hero changing. It's about discovering something new about human nature that we didn't initially think was possible. It's about peeling back the layers of the human heart and discovering what separates the good eggs from the bad.
All right, up, come on.
I'm gonna say this just to you. No cameras, no courtroom, just you, because you know it's true. We allowed you into our home. We let you watch our granddad, we welcomed you into our family, and now you think you can steal it from us? You think I'm not gonna fight to protect my home?
The reason why the crime was committed is oftentimes dark and unexpected. The big draw behind this film lies in the fact that we, as the audience members, become detectives. But it's not only our job to discover who committed the crime before it's actually revealed on screen. It's ultimately our job to discover what the driving force behind why evil occurred in this film to begin with. So when we're writing, it's important for us to ask, what separates the just from the immoral? What are you subconsciously trying to teach the audience through the crime that's being committed? The triumphant fool.
Hamburger.
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 Ham.
Ham.
Bur.
Bur.
Gur.
Gur.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
Black Knight, Austin Powers, Pink Panther, and Pirates of the Caribbean. Snyder mentions, on the outside, he's just a village idiot, but further examination reveals him to be the wisest among us. Now this story genre follows little men, stupid men, silly men, foolish men, who dare to triumph over a bigger, more powerful bad guy. Now these films are often satirical and make fun of the traditional structures that we often take too seriously and abide by on a day-to-day basis. In order for this film to work, we need an underdog who everyone in society views as inept and ill-equipped to do their job, and an established person or institute for that person to attack. Now, this person can oftentimes have a companion who is in on the joke and can't really believe that the fool is actually overcoming what he's overcoming. Institutionalized. Now, did you ever dream that there was a relationship between Jungle Book, The Godfather, and The Lion King? Now, I gotta be honest with you, this genre is perhaps the most complex to interpret and comprehend thus far. This genre tells the story of people who are a part of groups, institutions, and families, and expose the problems people have living within the confines of these groups. This genre honors these society's norms, highlights their issues, and showcases it for all to see.
I do renounce him.
Oftentimes, our hero in this genre grapples with their identity and their place in that particular group. Loyalty to the group, in many cases, can threaten your hero's morals, identity, mental health, and even their life. And this is all about the pros and cons of putting the needs of the group ahead of ourselves.
Well, I just needed to get out on my own, live my own life, and I did, and it's great.
We've really needed you at home.
No one needs me.
Yes, we do. You're the king.
Nala, we've been through this. I'm not the king. Scar is.
Simba, he let the hyenas take over the Pride Lands.
What?
Everything's destroyed. There's no food, no water. Simba, if you don't do something soon, everyone will starve.
I can't go back.
Why?
You wouldn't understand.
What wouldn't I understand?
No. It doesn't matter. Hakuna Matata.
What?
Hakuna Matata. It's something I learned out here. Look, sometimes bad things happen.
Simba.
And there's nothing you can do about it. So why worry?
Because it's your responsibility.
Now, life in this society is oftentimes complex, which is why the story is oftentimes told from the perspective of the newcomer, so that crucial exposition can be told and delivered through that newcomer to the audience to tell us how the world works and why the world operates this way.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect all the creatures, from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope.
But Dad, don't we eat the antelope?
Yes, Simba, but let me explain. When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so we are all connected.
Remember, the main source of conflict in this genre comes from your protagonist's inability to fit in within the confines of this society and grappling with his identity with respect to this group. Superhero.
We're set up in the Oval Office, and of course a photo op of you kicking his ass. Texas being more of a checker state. There's a dinner tonight after the reception at the Russian Chess Club in Georgetown. A lot of prominent dissidents belong, so we've prepared a list of talking points. It's a big deal.
Now this final genre needs no introduction. This is the exact opposite of the genre Dude with a Problem, and follows the life of an extraordinary person living in an ordinary world. Now it's imperative that we give this extraordinary person very human qualities, and also that we give him or her human characteristics that we can empathize with. If we do that, then we are building a bridge from the film straight into the hearts of our audience. The superhero genre goes far beyond Superman, Spider-Man, or Batman. Now this genre is certainly about superheroes, but this film is also about human superheroes who struggle with the mediocre world around them. Films in this genre are typically about being different in a world that is so ordinary and finding your place in that ordinary world. Now this film must stress the pain that goes hand in hand with having these abilities in this ordinary world. Whether it's suffering the consequences of loneliness, isolation, anguish, being misunderstood, or just plain old not fitting in, he must endure some kind of human struggle. You've got to stress sympathy for our hero in order for your film to be a smash hit. And the same goes for all sequels as well. You're about to learn how to create a protagonist your audience can identify with, how to improve your existing log lines, giving your film primal stakes, and why you should start learning about archetypes. One of the biggest mysteries to crack when it comes down to creating our protagonist and antagonist is just figuring out who they are. This guy, person who wrote this book, his father used to tell him, "Tell me about a guy who." The who is our way in, whether it's a $200 million action epic or a Geico commercial. The who gives our audience someone to identify with, and that someone doesn't even have to be human. We need someone or something to experience our ideas so that our audience knows what we're trying to say. Our heroes are our audience stand-ins that resonate for our target market and serves the goals and needs of our story. And of course, we start this process by creating our log lines. Any good log line gives us someone to identify with, as well as a big problem they've got to grapple with. In any good log line, there will be a few specific adjectives involved. So let's recap what our log line needs to be compelling. An adjective to describe the hero, an adjective to describe the bad guy or antagonistic force, and a compelling goal that we can all identify with as human beings. So we know that our stories has to have at least one or two main people we can focus our attention on, identify with, and want to root for, and someone who can carry the movie's theme. So for me personally, I don't come up with the characters first. I come up with the big story concept first. That gets me excited. That gets me out of the bed in the morning. And I shove the characters in after. Then afterwards, I realized that I started to morph these characters into people who they need to be to make my story work better. And you know what? Turns out I was on the right track. We've got to remember from a structure perspective that the who should serve the story concept first. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, Alan, no, characters serve themselves. Well, that's also true. In every scene that you write, characters will function and act in a way that serves themselves, that gets them what they want. They have to. Let me repeat that. They must function in a way that serves themselves. Now, I know we've got to make characters that serve themselves, but remember, our jobs as screenwriters is to tie that character's wants, needs, and desires into that story concept, so that overall, our character does serve the needs of our story. So confusing. Let me break it down. Let's take Ariel from Little Mermaid, for instance. This story concept is all about the trials and tribulations of a young lady growing up, spreading her wings, and eventually leaving the nest. It's clear that Ariel wants to experience all of the joys and pleasures that comes from living on land. Why? Because it's new, it's exciting, it's fun, and it's not what she's used to. And now all Ariel really needs is an anchor for her to really sink her teeth into. A physical manifestation of all of the joys and pleasures that come from living on land and experiencing something new. Something that makes Ariel's desire strong enough to defy her father, make a deal with the devil, and put her beautiful voice on the line. You guessed it, that anchor is a man. The prince. Now remember what I said? We need someone or something to experience our ideas so that our audience knows what we're trying to say. See, I was right. But for the sake of this story, this man is a physical manifestation of everything that Ariel wants out of life right now. And in the end, hopefully the audience realizes that Ariel's needs, wants, and desires are indeed tied to that overall story concept I described earlier. Please leave a comment below if it does or doesn't make sense. So with that new knowledge under our belts, think about who my character has to be to maximize the validity of my story. Our story should mean the most to our MC. So for our feature films, we want our hero to be the person who really needs those lessons that our story has to offer. Snyder argues to really make our story concepts work, we have to play with our characters to give our hero the most conflict, the longest journey, and the most primal goal to amp up our idea for maximum impact. The prince works so well as a physical manifestation for everything Ariel wants and needs in the story because we all want to find love, and he is a physical manifestation of that love. He acts as the story's primal urge, the anchor. So remember, once we've got our hero, the motivation for how they move and operate has got to be a basic one. What does your hero want? In any commercial film, our hero has got to have urges tied to survival, hunger, sex, protection of others, or fear of death. Something extremely basic. These primal desires gives our hero real stakes. We'll realize that once we make our character's desires primal and put that in the forefront of our stories, that we're really creating some compelling conflict here. Across the Spider-Verse has Miles Morales struggling to strike a balance between fighting crime, focusing on his future, and showing up for his family. But when Miles discovers his nemesis will kill his father in 2 days, he fights whoever stands in his way, all the way up to the end, showing us what truly mattered to him all along, even though he struggled showing up for them throughout the film. Now, imagine if Miles already made himself available for his family, put crime fighting on pause, was on time to every family function and every school meeting. One, this would take away all the great conflict we have in this story, and more importantly, it would undervalue what Miles was forced to learn in the climax. It's a more effective movie because he didn't show up when he was supposed to. So let's pretend we're writing the second draft of Across the Spider-Verse for a second, right? In the second draft, the writers definitely knew what story they were telling. And in the rewriting process, they may have made him late to all of those family functions instead of being on time. These small little tweaks amplify the validity of this story. Another example of how an idea can easily be ruined by overdeveloped characters or the wrong characters. All right, so now that we know this, we can go back into our log lines and change our heroes into someone who makes our story work best. Snyder explains that we must create heroes who offer the most conflict in that situation, have the longest way to go emotionally, and are the most demographically pleasing. And remember, Snyder focused a lot on marketability in his scripts, right? So he thought that we should really focus on heroes that our audience would enjoy seeing on screen. Additionally, to learn a little bit more about the heroes in our story, it would really do us some good to really know about the kind of hero we are creating and know where that kind of hero came from. Believe it or not, our heroes come from a long line of other heroes that is just like the one you are creating. And this is where our conversation about archetypes comes into play. If we analyze heroes and other stories with similar arcs and similar demographics, it pretty much matches up with our hero. We'll see what's been done before to them, and then we can find new and innovative ways to spruce these people up. He doesn't want us writing with a particular actor in mind. He wants us to really understand the long lineage of heroes our MC descended from. Snyder says, like knowing the history of certain story types, knowing the long line of ancestors your characters descend from is a must. Your job, your simple task is to forget the stars, concentrate on the archetypes, and strive to make them new. So ultimately, Snyder tells us to create a story about a guy or girl who we can identify with, we can learn from, we have a compelling reason to follow, we believe deserves to win, and has stakes that are primal and ring true for you. Opening image, theme stated, setup, catalyst, resisting change, debate, end of Act 1, end of debate. Break into Act 2, B story, diving in, foreshadowing, midpoint, Trouble, first half of efforts turn on characters. All is lost, dark night of the soul, break into act 3, revelation, finale, resolution, final image. By the end of this video, you are going to have a clear understanding of how to properly structure your screenplay using pen and paper or a computer. You'll learn how you can apply this to your screenplay. Screenwriting structure is the single most important element when it comes to writing a successful feature film. Over the years, Blake Snyder's beat sheet has become the foundation for commercial contemporary cinema. He asserts that in order for our screenplay to be a commercial success, it must have a structural order of operations that dives deeper into the contemporary 3-act structure. This system revolutionized the way filmmakers and enthusiasts viewed feature films in Hollywood. This is a filmmaking tool that is meant to work hand in hand with your film treatment in order for you to fully flesh out your screenplay. It's Hollywood's secret weapon, the beat sheet. If you're excited to learn or relearn the beat sheet, just give this video a like and let's get started. Story beat 1, opening image. This beat will be found on page 1. The purpose of this beat is to establish the tone, mood, style, and establish the stakes of your film, to inform the audience of the kind of film they're about to watch. This basically lets your audience know what they're in for. This gives the screenwriter the opportunity to establish who the characters are before the events in your story change them forever and force them to become better or worse versions of themselves. The matching beat for the opening image is the final image at the end of the film. And since the protagonist of your story will inevitably change by the powerful events in your story, the opening image and your final image should be opposites. Snyder calls them your film's bookends. Now we know that good stories have well-rounded character arcs. We also know that a character arc is the result of their journey, giving us a character's personal growth or mental emotional decline or deterioration. These two beats are a way to make clear to your audience how your characters have changed as a result of their journey. Your opening can also give your audience hints into the Act 3 story revelation, as you can see here in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, and in The Prestige. Story beat 2, theme stated.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
The theme or thematic premise is the omnipresent invisible current driving your entire story. The theme of your film will be mentioned, discussed, or alluded to around the first 4 to 5% of your screenplay. Someone, usually not the main character, will pose a question or make a statement, usually to the main character, that is the theme of the movie.
All except the most valuable one, the transported man.
Well, I won't forgive myself for selling my greatest trick.
Even for your daughter.
It won't be obvious, it'll be conversational. An offhand remark that the main character doesn't quite get at the moment, but which will have far-reaching and meaningful impact later. Snyder refers to this as the thematic premise. This is the argument posed by the screenwriter, the pros and cons of living a particular kind of life or pursuing a specific goal. The passion for perfecting their shows transforms two magicians into dangerous entities who gives more love to their magic tricks and rivalry than they give to their family. At its core, they're placing their career above their family. So Christopher Nolan's cinematic masterclass is a metaphor about what will happen if you deem your career more valuable than your family. Obsession turns you into a completely different person.
I just don't know. You don't know? I'm sorry. You don't know? You don't know?
Theme is a human condition lesson that the filmmaker is trying to teach. It ties all of the sequences into a unified film. The emotional, intellectual, or spiritual issue at the core of your story. It is the invisible thread that gives your story weight. If you do not have a well fleshed out theme or thematic premise in your first draft, according to both Snyder and Robert McKee, it's all right. Odds are you don't have the whole picture until you've actually undergone all of the sequences in your story, because according to them, you may not have it yet. And I've also realized it with myself. As I'm writing the first draft of my story, I'm not quite crystal clear on what the theme may be yet. But by the second draft, I can hone it in and make some rewrites in order to make this abundantly clear to my audience. Story beat 3, the setup. This is the first 10 to 12 pages of your screenplay, and the objective is to grip your audience and shake them up. You need to grab your audience or you risk losing their attention. This is where you set up the main players in your story and establish the stakes in your film, so that by the first 10 minutes you've already met or referenced all of the main players in your story. Players also should exhibit behaviors or characteristics that needs to be addressed later on. You're showing the audience why your hero needs to change in order to achieve his goal. What's missing in the life of your hero? Here we see the world before the adventure starts, or as Snyder calls it, the thesis. The calm before the storm. Because if the events that follow in your story did not occur, your characters would not change. Story beat 4, catalyst. This beat should occur around page 12, or page 20 or 21 if you're Christopher Nolan, but you really don't want it to occur after page 12 because, according to Snyder, your story will drag. So we've set up our story, we've set up our characters and characteristics and faults that they may have. We've set up our dominoes, and now it's time to knock them down. This is the point in your story where your MC is completely destabilized by an event that causes a fundamental change in the way that their lives operate. In other words, this is where something tremendous happens in your MC's life. An earth-shattering event that shoves your MC straight into their perilous journey. Story beat 5, resisting change, debate. So the debate is going to be how your MC thinks that he's going to move forward and get closer to his outer goal. And it should be in some way, shape, or form tied into your film's thematic premise. Here, your MC outwardly explores or debates the wrong way of going about solving his problem. He swears up and down that the steps that he's about to take is going to lead him to his success. But he'd be wrong. He's going about life incorrectly because he has the wrong idea about how to fix his problem. Since he hasn't endured the hardships that the rest of your story has in store, the MC still doesn't have a true grasp on how he should achieve his goal. And that's because at this point your MC might not be sure what his actual true goal is. This can also be an internal debate that has large-scale implications that will be brought to the surface later in your screenplay. Quick tip. In a story where your character will survive or overcome, the MC will generally take steps in the right direction overall. But the idea is that they're simply going about it the wrong way. As long as your MC's actions align with your film's thematic premise, he'll survive, conquer, and dominate. Whereas in a tragedy, your MC will progressively take steps in the wrong direction that directly opposes the thematic premise of your film until his actions eventually lead to his inevitable death. Story beat 6, end of Act 1, end of debate. Here, the MC makes a definitive choice. He makes a decision to go about solving life's issues. Depending on your screenplay, the MC will take a step in the right direction that brings him to the next beat of the film. So yes, what he came up with may be a partial solution to his problem, but he doesn't have the full answer yet. The MC discovers a false solution that drives a wedge between him and his true goal. That's why you need the rest of your story for him to make some course corrections. The more drastic those course corrections, the better your screenplay. Story beat 7, break into Act 2. This is where you dive headfirst into your upside-down world you've established in Act 1. The MC must take a definitive step into this beat. He cannot be lured, wandered, or tricked into it. No. The MC finds this new path and begins to embark on or execute the plans that they set in motion at the very end of Act 1. The purpose of this beat is to truly identify what your MC really needs in order to win and be successful at life, and identify your MC's faults to your audience. Any faults or any tics, this may ultimately be a portion of what is holding your main character back. If your thematic premise was pretty subtle, please feel free to revisit it here through the lens of your main character. Give him a thematic premise checkup. See how your MC's doing. Put an obstacle in the protagonist's way and see how he responds. They still holding on to the same habits?
All right, and I'm out in public. Everybody else loves it.
Why are you being like this, Alfred?
I had a terrible ordeal today.
Or are they moving and operating differently now?
Fella, we'll just put a rug there.
Sit down. Give me that. I'll give you 300. That's a standard freelance fee. Tear up page 1, run that photo instead. Headline? Spider-Man, hero or menace? Exclusive Daily Bugle photos.
Menace? He was protecting that armored
I'll tell you
car
what,
from those-
Atticus, you take the pictures, I'll make up the headlines, okay? All right? That okay with you?
Yes, sir.
How they respond will greatly influence how intensely you're able to beat them up later. It'll decide whether they just need a gentle push forward or an earthquake. I like earthquakes. Just keep this in mind, and this goes for all of your story beats moving forward. The more you set up, the more you will have to pay off later. Story beat 8, B story. This is the love story.
What are you doing around here?
I'm begging for a job. How about you?
The essential break required from the intense A story. Now, don't get me wrong. Each and every element in this beat sheet was created in order to push your main character forward so that he's able to figure out what he has to do in order to accomplish his goal. Even though the B story is here to give us a little break from the A story, the B story should have the pure essence of our theme. This love story provides an open forum for you to discuss the theme of the film openly. Our protagonist will draw his strength from the characters, concepts, and lessons that he's learned from characters in the B story to help push him into Act 3 and eventually achieve victory in the end. According to Snyder, we may visit characters who are the upside-down versions of those characters who inhabit the world of Act 1. Story beat 9, diving in, fun and games. Here, we arrive at the reason why you're writing your screenplay to begin with. Here is the heart of your screenplay. Have fun with this portion, guys. You should be exhilarated to write this section. This is the essence of your movie poster. This is also where most of the moments in your film trailer will come from. This is the reason why audiences all around the world are going to think your film is awesome.
Impressive!
This is the heart of your movie. Here we take a break from the heavy stakes of the movie and showcase intriguing elements about your film. Here we see what your film's big idea is all about. Story beat 10, foreshadowing. This is a portion of your diving in section that occurs at the very tail end of it. This is where the main character begins to realize that he may have a deep-rooted issue that may be preventing him from achieving what he wants. He organically begins to actively work towards becoming better. Here is your MC's first real attempt to fight back against his central conflict. Now, this section may not be long. It may be just a second, depending on how your story is structured, but unfortunately, your MC is still trying to figure out how he should go about life correctly. He, in fact, took a huge step towards the right direction, or a huge step towards the wrong direction if it's a tragedy. Think of it as your MC trying to cover up his injuries with a band-aid when in fact, he needs surgery. Because of this, the protagonist's attempt to solve core issues with his main supporting characters awkwardly fails.
Is it yours?
For a while.
Well, then you should keep it, Roman.
Not in my room.
In your apartment.
I gave it up.
Why?
I'm going away.
Where?
This gives the audience a glimpse of what life could be like if the MC lived up to his true potential. Story beat 11, midpoint. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because according to Snyder, the midpoint until your all is lost section are the most difficult portions of your screenplay. At the midpoint, we have a peak in our story. This is where the writer raises the stakes. Fun and games are over. This is where your protagonist will experience his highest positive emotional high, where the hero seemingly peaks, though it is a false peak. Bad guys may be temporarily defeated, or the protagonist will experience his lowest emotional low, when the world collapses around them, though it is a false collapse. The matching beat to the midpoint is all is lost. The rule is, it's never as good as it seems to be at the midpoint, and it's never as bad as it seems to be at the all is lost. This is their relationship with one another. Story beat 12. First half of efforts turn on characters. Bad guys close in. Doubt, jealousy, anguish, shame, and internal discord begins to erupt around our main characters. Meanwhile, the antagonists of our story band together and plan their merciless onslaught on our main characters. They bring in the big guns. In other words, they strike the MC and the MC's allies when they're at their weakest. The forces that are aligned against the hero, internal and external, tighten their grip and choke out our MC and his allies. And when the protagonist's descent feels like it can't get any worse, it does. Story beat 13, all's lost. Remember when I mentioned in the Break into Act 2 section how the protagonist's response to an obstacle prompted by the thematic premise will decide how intensely you must beat down your character later? Well, this is where you do it. So now think about what you like to do in order to break down your main character. Got it? Good. Now multiply that by 4. What is the worst possible thing that could happen to your main character? Yeah, pick that. This must reinforce how important your thematic premise is to your main character while keeping him alive. If you're trying to kill your main character, don't do it just yet. Death is most certainly involved in this beat here. All is lost is synonymous with death. So the protagonist's best friend, family member, or character who your protagonist just can't live without is brutally murdered, or something like that. Now, it doesn't have to be a literal murder if your film's a lighthearted comedy, or your film's tone wouldn't work very well with that kind of darkness. If you have one of these kinds of stories, then the point here would be to allude or strongly suggest the death of something. The death of a relationship, the death of an ideal, the death of something. This is meant to represent to the audience that the MC's old way of thinking is dead.
Family comes first. Family comes first.
Snyder calls it the whiff of death. Story beat 14, the dark night of the soul. Here is the moment that you really need your audience to truly feel what your MC is feeling. Because this answers the question, how does your character experiencing this moment feel about what just occurred? It can last a few seconds or even 10 minutes. This is your main character's deepest, darkest moment externalized. Really put this moment on display for your audience. He's hopeless, clueless, wasted, beaten down, buried, and burned. But then he'll rise up from the ashes, and your MC will emerge, reborn, afresh. Which brings your protagonist to your Act 3 revelation. The MC's deepest, darkest moments leads him to this aha moment, the solution to his problems, thanks to the characters found in the B story, thanks to all of the conversations discussing the heart of the movie, thanks to every single painful loss, the external story, A story, and the internal story, B story, collide. The synthesis of Act 1 and Act 2 gives your MC this startling revelation. He's dug down deep and found this solution. Now all he has to do is apply what he's learned in the grand finale. Snyder. The classic fusion of A and B is the hero getting the clue from the girl, B story, that makes him realize how to solve both, beating the bad guys and winning the heart of his beloved. An idea to solve the problem has emerged. Synthesis. Story beat 16. Finale. Resolution. This is where the lessons learned in Act 1 and in Act 2 are applied. The A story and the B story end in triumph for our hero, or the hero is defeated. The original source of the problem is typically dispatched of for this new world order to exist. This must be done in an emotionally satisfying manner. Your audience must certainly feel something here.
Misery, misery, misery. That's what you've chosen.
The best endings will be somewhat of a hybrid melancholy mix of a super emotional high and an extreme low, as this feeling mimics many of real life's finales.
Don't tell Harry.
Story beat 17, final image. This will be the opposite of your opening image and be proof to your audience needed that tells them that change has occurred. Now I'm going to answer one final question for you, and it's called an act break. What's an act break? We've got one after Act 1 and another one right after Act 2. Some act breaks are more obvious than other act breaks, but an act break is simply the moment where we exit the old world in the previous act and enter the new world in the next act. Act break smoothly transitions our audience to the next phase of our story. Save the cat. The Pope in the Pool, Double Mumbo Jumbo, Laying Pipe, Black Vet, aka Too Much Marzipan, Watch Out for That Glacier, The Covenant of the Ark, Keep the Press Out. When Blake Snyder was alive, he wrote this game-changing book called Save the Cat. And listen, whether or not you like his techniques or his structure methods or his controversial statements in his book, his filmmaking structure techniques are taught all around the country. So it's time we learned about what Blake described as the 8 immutable laws of screenplay physics. Save the cat. This is the law that states as soon as we meet the main character, we have to see him or her in action, doing something that allows the audience to empathize with him. The MC should do something that gets the audience to side with him. We meet him, we like him because he or her did something to get us on their side. Now listen, this doesn't necessarily have to be a good thing. This could be a very bad thing. He's probably doing something scary, something clever, or he's just kicking somebody's behind. Listen, when writing, it's very important to get the audience in sync with our main character, and this is how you do it. Saving the cat is capturing the audience's attention with the MC. This is part of the reason why we care about him or her. Now, if you'd like to learn more about specific ways to save the cat, please take a look at this video right here. And that's all about how you can get your audience to empathize with your main character, aka save the cat. The Pope in the Pool. So every great story with any amount of depth requires some amount of exposition. So exposition is backstory or details about the plot that is essential for the audience to know if the audience is going to move forward and enjoy the rest of the story, so that they can actually understand what happens next. But the problem many of us writers face is burying the exposition so deep in our stories that our audience finds it difficult to distinguish exposition from main story. Now, I agree with Blake Snyder. Exposition is probably the worst part of any complex movie. And this is exactly why modern masters of storytelling mask their exposition with innovative imagery. What we've got to do is distract our audience while delivering exposition so that they're not quite picking up on the fact that we're actually giving them exposition while we're giving them exposition. So Snyder describes the scenario where representatives are visiting the Pope at the Vatican. Where? The Vatican pool. And the Pope is wearing a bathing suit. And the idea is the Pope is swimming back and forth as exposition unfolds. So truthfully, in this scenario, right, the audience is probably thinking, wait, the Pope is not wearing Pope clothes. He's swimming in a pool right now. And before the audience realizes they're being fed exposition, the scene is over. He describes this exposition burying technique as Pope in the pool. So you're simply giving your audience something else substantial to chew on while delivering your exposition. And before the audience realizes you're feeding them an exposition sandwich, boom, you're out of the scene. Double mumbo jumbo. This ties directly into the audience suspension of disbelief concept. So there's only but so much an audience member is going to be able to handle in a movie. So as a writer, we're not trying to overwhelm the audience or give them more than they can handle. Now, Snyder believed that audience members will only accept one piece of magic per movie. Broadly, we shouldn't be seeing ghosts and vampires in the same movie, unless you create a well-established set of rules that governs this universe, like in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, J.R.R. Tolkien's works, and comic book films. And remember, this is just a rule that can be broken if done properly, like in Everything Everywhere All at Once. But the reason why this film works so well is because the entire film is centered around one concise, controlling idea. Be kind. Trust me, the Daniels knew this rule existed, which is why they were able to work around it and get about 7 Oscars. But odds are, if the majority of us try to break this rule without properly knowing what we're doing, then we're just gonna end up with more Sharknadoes. Laying pipe. Yep, that's the rule. So when we are setting up our story or establishing our premise, we are going about a process Blake Snyder calls laying pipe. On the beat sheet, this is everything that happens in our story leading up to the catalyst. But unfortunately, we can only lay pipe for so long before our audience members get bored. Now, laying pipe provides, I swear I did not come up with this word. Laying pipe provides the stepping stones for our audience members to understand the setup of our story. But laying too much pipe only serves to lessen the overall quality of the story and lowers the overall quality of the movie-going experience. We want to get to our story's hook in about 15 to 25 minutes max. Blake Snyder said, your story's got too much splaining. if you can't do it in 15 or 25 minutes or less. Now, this is the problem with laying too much pipe. So by needing so much backstory to understand the whole story, the entire story as a result begins to torque out of shape. So Snyder warns us, please set up your stories in 25 minutes or less. Emphasis on the less part. Black Vet, aka Too Much Marzipan. Now this is a play off of Double Mumbo Jumbo. The title arcs back to Albert Brooks' SNL parodies he did in the 1970s.
All kinds of takes. The double take, the elbow take, and today they're working on the spit take. Made so famous by Danny Thomas on Make Room for Daddy.
A fake promo he did on SNL was called Black Vet, and he was a war vet and a veterinarian. In other words, this screenwriting mistake occurs when we try to roll up too many great ideas all into one to try to maximize the relevance of our idea, or eating too much marzipan. So we've got to keep in mind as writers that a little goes a long way when it comes to extracting the central core ideas behind a small little concept. Take a look at Paranormal Activity, Alien, 10 Cloverfield Lane, Saw. More does not always mean better. Simple is better. We don't want to get too caught up in harvesting all the seeds of all of our story ideas, all into one story, mutating it into one work and hoping it's a masterpiece. Oftentimes, less is more. One great concept at a time, please. Watch out for that glacier. Now this is when danger is approaching your protagonists at a snail's pace. They're coming very slowly, like 1 inch per year. That is how unthreatening your life-threatening event is. Now of course, slow dangers in great movies happen all the time. But even if your danger may lie somewhere in the background, creeping up on our heroes, we've got to remember to keep our danger present. Stakes must be present for all of the characters we care about. Consequences of our imminent threat has got to be known straight out the gate. The Covenant of the Ark. Now this screenwriting law states that every character must change throughout the course of the entire story. Now the characters who usually don't end up changing much are the bad guys. Why? Because they usually end up falling on a spike filled with their own fruitless ideals, philosophies, and stuck in their old immutable ways. Arc is a term that means the change that occurs to any character from the beginning through the middle and to the end of each character's journey. Now we should be able to chart the growth and change our character undergoes throughout the course of the movie. Because in our films, the plot points are so integral to the character's growth, they're so life-changing for everyone involved, that even you, the audience, changes as a result. It affects every person in its orbit. So if your story is worth telling, it must be vitally important to everyone involved. Our setups and payoffs for each of our characters must be carefully tracked from beginning to end. So don't worry, this is a task that we usually save for our rewrites. And this change in all characters occurs in some really good movies, and it usually improves rewatchability. So before you sit down and write, or rewrite, notate how each character is going to arc by charting their internal and external journeys from start to finish. On the beat sheet, write down the physical and emotional milestones your characters must complete in order to arc. Remember, broadly, good guys are those willing to accept change as a positive force. Bad guys are those who refuse to change, who will curl up in their own juices, unable to move out of the rut that their lives represent. To succeed in life is to be able to transform. Real change occurs when, at the end of the film, there is a fundamental alteration of their internal philosophies about how they live their lives. Don't know if we have any anime fans in the building, but like what happened to Eren in season 4 of Attack on Titan. Keep the press out. Now this is a lesson that Snyder learned from Steven Spielberg himself. Unless your story truly requires media outlets and the news to really tell your story, Spielberg advises Snyder to keep the press out. Let's take E.T. for instance. Spielberg discovered that the reality of the E.T. premise would be destroyed if the press was involved. But by keeping the alien a secret among the family and the block, the magic experienced by E.T. was able to stay alive. In other words, the magic stayed grounded and real with respect to the story. When you bring the press into the E.T. story, we'd effectively be striking the same chord as breaking the fourth wall. All of the joy the alien brought to life in this story would be gone. Dead. Fine, you're like, Alan, my story needs the news in it. Okay? All right, whenever you add the press in, think about this. What does the press bring to your overall premise? And what does the press have to do with the core values of your entire story? Now, unless you're dealing with a Gone Girl kind of story where public perception was key to how the story functioned, then keep the press out. Or at least bring the press in with care. If you'd like to have the press in your story, just think about this. What does Nightcrawler and Gone Girl have in common? Well, the press is directly tied into the main character's perception of themselves. She wants the public to view her as this heroic victim. And Jake Gyllenhaal's character's mission was to use the power of the press in order to build his news empire. In both cases, the press is directly tied to each character's central conflict, or it was a huge part of their outer motivation. The hero leads, talking the plot, making the bad guy better, turn, 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 the emotional color wheel. Hi. How are you? I'm fine. Take a step back. A limp and an eye patch. Is it primal? Congratulations, you finished writing your script. That's awesome. Hope it's not too long. So the biggest things that separates the newbies from the vets are the way we go about our rewriting processes. If you're new, odds are there is no rewriting processes. You're like, my film is incredible. I used the beat sheet, Dan Harmon's story circles in there. There's nothing wrong with my story. Well, odds are you're wrong. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 9 corrections Blake Snyder recommends that we make in our screenplays. If you're excited to learn, give this video a like and let's get started. The hero leads.
Did you hear that? The future king!
Oh, don't hurt me. Oh, do it again. Now, this is a problem that I've had with the scripts that I've written in the past, and it is the classic case of the inactive hero. So our hero is kind of being dragged along this journey. Circumstances are being presented to him or her. But the problem is, our hero isn't the core reason why we are being taken on this journey to begin with. So our hero is gonna come across as unmotivated, and his desires and his goal is gonna come off as vague. He never seeks clues, they're just kind of given to him. He has no clear goals or ambitions. He just kind of exists and he doesn't know why. Now, if this describes your hero, fix it stat. Your hero must be proactive. If he's not a hero. That driving force behind why your hero moves must be clear to your audience. Now, here's a few questions Snyder presents to us in case our hero needs more raw. Is your hero's goal clearly stated in the setup? So what your hero wants should be obvious to the audience. So make sure his goals are spoken aloud and restated in actions and in words throughout the story. Do clues of what to do next just come to your hero, or does he or she actively seek them out? So if opportunities or solutions to your hero's problems just kind of emerge out of the blue or come too easily to our hero, then something's wrong. Every great story doesn't just have a random ex machina. Your hero cannot be handed his destiny. He's got to work for it every step of the way. Is your hero passive or active? If he's passive, that's a problem. So everything the hero does has to emerge from his or her burning desire. This desire is backed up by proactive, relentless actions he takes towards achieving his goal. Now, this helps the audience feel how urgent accomplishing said goals are. Urgency and proactive thinking are clear signs that our hero is active. We've got to feel our hero's need to cross that finish line. Do other characters tell your hero what to do, or does your hero tell them? Now, the hero knows the answers to the important questions, and others around him look to him for answers, not the other way around. Now, obviously, when it comes to his fatal flaw or central conflict, he's blind. But generally, if you see a lot of question marks swirling around the MC's dialogue, there's a larger problem. Now, I know we often give our heroes a pass when it comes to exposition, but generally, the hero leads. Talking the plot. Well, you were junior high school wrestling champ. Well, you were the #1 police detective on the force. Oh, how are you doing since your father passed?
He was the 02-03 junior high tennis champion. Apparently, during the third-year awards ceremony, he announced that he was hanging up his racket, and I guess he hasn't played competitively since.
I get it. You want the audience to know some backstory. Throw some photos up on the wall, because this kind of dialogue is bad. Do not resort to your characters speaking plot or exposition. It's easy, it's cheap, and it is a simple way to deliver exposition. But this is by far the least effective in eliciting a strong emotion in our our audience, and ultimately will not separate our story from the pack. Snyder warns us that this is guaranteed to have your script thrown across the room by the reader. I know what you're thinking. Alan, there's no way I can tell them what backstory and exposition I have going on. I know it's difficult, but this is our job as excellent storytellers. It's our jobs as creatives to craft beautiful, poignant solutions to these problems. And as we work on solving these issues, we begin to refine and polish our screenwriting abilities. We've got to keep in mind that characters do not serve you. They serve themselves. They've got to walk into a scene with their words, their goals, and their objectives in mind, not yours. You reveal what they want, their goals, dreams, ambitions, hopes, and fears by not only what they say, but how they say it as well. Good dialogue tells us more about what's going on in the subtext than on its surface.
If you only knew how little I know about the things that matter.
What things that matter?
You know what things.
Subtle is better, and talking the plot is not subtle at all. It's overkill. So bear in mind the age-old storytelling axiom, show, don't tell. Now this problem, in particular, plagues the African-American screenwriting community. We must fix this. Imagine trying to convey an issue with a marriage, and you always have a noisy girl talking to a girlfriend saying, "Hey, girl, you know he can't keep it in his pants. I know he tried, but..." We don't need to show her talking to a girlfriend. We don't need to see a boring counseling session. Imagine how much you can communicate to your audience just by showing a man and his wife walking down the street. A beautiful woman with curves walk by. Where does the man's eyes go? Glued to that woman, just staring at the curvy girl with his wife right beside him. Now remember, your audience is a lot more perceptive than you think. Now the audience is gonna know immediately that there's trouble in paradise, right? Character is revealed by action taken, not by words spoken. And in a good movie, information doesn't come out in dialogue. It comes out in the actions we're watching play out on screen. And instead of backstory and exposition, you should be focusing on what's happening in your story right now, rather than focusing on what happened before the story started. Make the bad guy better. Why? Because your main character is proactive, he's great, he's awesome, he's amazing. So your antagonist has to be the reflection of what your hero is, except with no boundaries. The bad guy should be more effective at achieving his goals because he doesn't have any limitations or altruistic code or sense of morality prohibiting him from getting done what he has to get done. He's generally willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. The good guy has this box he has to work within. The bad guy is just like your good guy, except he has no box.
And I thought my jokes were bad.
We've got to make the bad guy so good at what he does that we as writers should be puzzled as to how the good guy is gonna get out of the bad guy's clutches. If we as writers get writer's block at the point where the bad guy's fortifying his forces, and you're thinking, how in the world is the good guy gonna win? How is he gonna get out of this one? It's generally a good thing. We really wanna be puzzled at that point as writers, because if we're puzzled as the story's architect, odds are your audience is gonna be puzzled. And this creates a lot of excitement and intrigue in our audience. Now we can reverse engineer in our stories and work backwards to plant seeds in our stories in Acts 1 and 2, things that the good guy may have missed that will eventually lead our good guy to success in Act 3, assuming he's been paying attention. We cannot protect our good guy from dangers and challenges. We've got to get used to throwing more at our hero than he can handle because that's how he or she grows. He needs an antagonist whose abilities surpass his own. Typically in a classic good guy versus bad guy film, the hero and the villain are two halves of the same person. They have much more in common than you think, but they usually have opposing goals and perspectives on the world. In many great movies, the protagonist and the antagonist are light and dark halves of the same person. Typically, the good guy has things to lose, like family, like friends, their jobs. That makes it more difficult for them to triumph over the antagonist. In most cases, the antagonist doesn't care what they lose or who they lose, and they're willing to sacrifice whoever they need to achieve their goals. The good guys wouldn't dare sacrificing loved ones to get what they want. So generally, protagonists have limitations and boundaries with respect to how they go about getting what they want, which makes accomplishing their goals infinitely harder than the bad guys. Turn, turn, turn. We want to be sure that as our film progresses, it doesn't simply float forward. The plot should spin and intensify as it moves forward. It's the difference between simple velocity and acceleration. Our first draft may consist of the plot just moving forward, but in our rewrites, we must go forward faster and with more complexity as we reach the story's climax. If all you've got is a chase, but nothing about the chase is provoking what's going on behind the audience's eyeballs, that's not good. Your audience is just watching stuff happen at this point, but nothing about the chase is compelling or engaging. Snyder says we don't just want kinetic eye candy with no forward motion. It's a chase with no stakes. They go here, they go there, but I don't care. And I don't know what or why I'm watching this. The story moves forward, but there is no turn, turn, turn. More must be revealed every step of the plot about your characters as we go forward. You've got to show how the activity of your plot is affecting your character's ability to make choices. You've got to show flaws, reveal treacheries, and fears of our heroes. You expose hidden powers and untapped potential our hero possesses. I'm paraphrasing, but Snyder says something like, show us facets about our characters that truly dazzle us like a diamond glistening in the light. So a plot doesn't simply move forward, it accelerates and reveals secrets with enthusiasm and charisma. The emotional color wheel.
Where's my shoe?
I see this mistake made in new filmmakers' works all the time. In our rewrites, we gotta be sure we're taking our audience through as many emotions as the tone of our film genre permits. We want our audience to experience as much emotions as possible. That's what storytelling is all about. You want the audience feeling like a used wash rag by the end. Their emotions have been wrung out. They've laughed, they've cried, they've been aroused, they've been scared, they felt anger, regret, frustration, anxiety. Typically, the more nuanced and specific the emotion you're able to clearly convey, the better. The idea is to effectively simulate in our audience what it feels like to live. We've created a dream state where life and its emotions are recreated in a safe environment.
Rachel, we really just wanted to see how you was doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, chemotherapy. It really sucks.
Greg, what the hell, bro? Don't say it sucked, dumbass.
That's kind of suck.
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I guess.
Like I said, I see this mistake in emerging filmmakers' works all the time. Yes, I understand that your character is sad, but you've got to take the extra step to synchronize your character with your audience. And when you're dealing with an extremely powerful emotion such as grief or sadness, we've got to see how that character was before he got stuck in grief to begin with. Now, if someone dies early in your story, you better show why the loss of this character meant so much to your MC before you just kill them off. Don't just assume that just because you killed off your main character's son or daughter that the audience is automatically supposed to feel just like the main character, as if you're just commanding your audience to care. It doesn't work like that. What emotion did this character bring to your MC? Happiness? Joy? Peace? Great. Now instead of showing generic memories or experiences, you start with an extremely important, specific memory that solidifies that character's significance in your MC's life in the story. So you show why they're important before you kill them off, before you even introduce the concept of them dying. You show that to your audience first, then you kill them. If your script feels one note emotionally, go back and flesh out your story using all of the emotions on the emotional color wheel. You're writing a love story, where's the lust scene? Where's your frustration scene? Where's your arousal scene? Where's your scary scene? And if you don't have these, take a scene that's just funny or dramatic and try to play it for one of the missing colors on the emotional color wheel. Take a look at what emotions are missing in your screenplay and pick one of the missing emotions. Take those scenes, use the same action, the same positive, negative charge, the same conflict and result, but play it for lust instead of laughs, jealousy instead of dramatic conflict. By varying the emotions you use, you create a much more fulfilling cinematic experience for everyone involved. Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. This is flat dialogue. I'm guilty of this as well. Even in the second draft of my feature-length thriller, it's still in there. This boring flat dialogue is a waste of space and it wastes your audience's time. Flat dialogue is the kind of dialogue that anyone can say. It's not specific or perfectly aligned with any one character. Engaging characters talk differently than you and I. They've got a unique way of saying the most mundane things.
Hey, get off. Kevin, out of the room.
Hang up the phone and make me, why don't you?
Which raises them above the norm. A character's dialogue is the opportunity to reveal what that character wants and who that person really is. It's our opportunity to reveal character. How someone talks is character and can highlight a character's past, inner demons, and his overall outlook on life. Every time a character speaks is your chance to show that.
It's not personal.
It feels personal when you chat up every other guy at the game except me. When you stay late for a drink with JT, but never... Have you visited his Oscar? I think it's bolted on the hood of his car. It's noticeable when you go out of your way to demonstrate that you have no interest in me. You did the same thing to Dean.
All your characters should not speak the same. They should all have a unique voice, which means you can run your script through this classic dialogue test. Cover up the names of the people speaking. Now, can you tell who's speaking just by looking at the words on the page? If you cannot tell what character's speaking just by looking at their dialogue, this is bad. Gotta be rewritten. So one extreme technique Snyder recommends if this is a problem in your script is giving each character some kind of a verbal tick. Now, you don't have to be this drastic in your screenplay by any means, but the overall idea behind this is that you're giving each character a unique verbal identifier so that you can tell who is speaking just by reading their dialogue. Snyder says this makes your characters richer. Take a step back. So this is a mistake that happens to everyone, even professional writers working in Hollywood. This is when, at the very beginning of the script, your hero is already who he or she needs to be by the end of the film. He didn't need the journey, he didn't need the plot to undergo change. He was effectively the same person at the beginning that he was at the end. And to fix this problem at the very beginning of your movie, you've got to take your main character a step back, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, so that the journey means something. Generally, you want to get into the habit of taking your main character back a step with each rewrite. You've got to take your main character as far back as humanly possible to increase the significance of your plot. This ensures that your plot exists to develop your MC. Many of us know where our heroes are going to end up, so oftentimes we place our heroes' minds at the end of the story psychologically, but he's just at the beginning. We're saving our MC the torment of growth. We as writers want our MC to succeed so badly that we show the audience a fully developed human being at the beginning. And this person is so developed that this undervalues the relevance of our story. We've got to show our characters bumps in the road, because showing these bumps makes the payoff at the end that much sweeter. These characters need to grow by getting slapped in the mouth, punched in the face, kneed in the nuts, knocked in the head so many times that they realize that, oh, but there's something that I'm not doing right here. I'm not supposed to be doing this, I'm supposed to be doing that. And they start doing that. If I think and move like this, then I won't get punched in the mouth and slapped in the face as much, and I can also accomplish my goals. Don't get so caught up in the end result that you deny us as the audience the adventure of that beautiful growth. Show the audience everything, all the change, all the growth, all the development, all the action of the hero's journey. A limp and an eye patch. Okay, so sometimes we've done all the things to make our script incredible, right? We have perfect structure, the plot is on point, it intensifies and explodes after the midpoint, dialogue is snappy, story is solid, growth is there, but something is missing in your script that you just can't put your finger on. There seem to be too many minor characters in your script who you may need to get rid of and or combine. It's kind of hard to tell these characters apart. Even though the dialogue is snappy and specific and unique, well, Snyder argues that your characters might be missing a limp and an eye patch. This confusion occurs when you haven't given the audience a hook to hang their hats on for each vital character in the story. In Kill Bill, we've got Uma Thurman's iconic yellow and black jumpsuit. Yes, every character has to have a unique way of speaking, but also a unique physical identifier, something physically memorable that will stick in the minds of the readers, that our audience will eventually be watching on screen. This is a visual cue or an ongoing visual reminder, which makes remembering who each character is a lot easier. Snyder says, a limp and an eye patch may seem like a silly way to attach traits to characters to make sure we remember them, but it works. So if you find yourself with one or several unidentifiable characters who are getting lost in the shuffle, try giving them a limp and an eye patch. Is it primal? So this is where Blake Snyder and Michael Haig, the person who wrote this book, certainly agree. Does your plot hinge on primal drives like survival, hunger, sex, protection of loved ones, or fear of death? At the root of anyone's goal in a commercial film must be something this basic. Even if on the surface it's something else, no matter what your story's about, by making your character's desire more primal, that plot is grounded in a reality that everyone can relate to. Snyder says, suddenly it's not about stockbrokers, it's about human beings trying to survive. These primal desires are perceived as a biological need. The primal desires at the root of most horror films, such as Paranormal Activity, It, Smile, is don't get killed, aka survive. At the core of many dramas, thrillers, and action films, no matter how sophisticated the plot, it must be about something that resonates at a caveman level. To be loved, to survive, to protect family, to exact revenge. In your rewrites, tie your main character's wants and needs to these primal desires, and you should be all good. If you're a filmmaker, you should grab a clover key to screw your camera plate onto your camera. Haven't seen my film yet? Don't worry, I'll post a link in the description below. Interested in learning from me one-on-one? Shoot me an email at alanprofilm@gmail.com. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys. Until next time, peace.